I've shared this with you before, and it's a seed that I hope to plant here before I move on. And I believe it's probably the most succinct statement of what resurrection is in real time and in all time. It's from Carl Jung, and it's from Jung's religious belief out of the book Psychology in Western Religion. The self of Christ is present in everybody a priori from the beginning, but as a rule in an unconscious condition to begin with. But it is a definite experience of later life when this fact becomes conscious. It is not really understood by teaching or suggestion. It is only real when it happens. And it can only happen when you withdraw your projections from an outward historical or metaphysical Christ, and thus wake up Christ within. Oh yeah, that's great. But it's really a head statement. And we heard an example of how this head statement plays out in story. First of all, in the Gospel of John, Mary outside the tomb. Oh, she looks in and sees angels, clue number one. Where have you laid him? Tell me where you've laid him, I'll carry him away. Turns around, sees Jesus standing there, but distracted by her anxiety and grief, cannot see. And for most of life, we human beings often find ourselves in that place with Mary. We cannot see. Distracted by anxiety or grief, distracted by extreme joy, by the pleasures of our ego. Christ always stands in our presence, is always within us from the beginning. But in that distraction, the moment of resurrection is lost until Mary calls her into the moment of resurrection. And she realizes the stone is rolled away and real life is there. Now there is somebody else that I think, a lot of preachers use this story on Christmas Eve, but I think it really fits on Easter. And it was written, I think in 1892 by an American author named Bret Harte. It's the story of the Luck of Roaring Camp. And it's set in the Sierra Nevadas of California during the height of the gold rush, in one of the gold rush camps, where, people weren't very nice. Very mean, getting into fights all the time, cussing, cursing, no churches, hardly any women. And of course, in Roaring Camp, there was one woman named Cherokee Sal, and she has a baby. And that baby, I think for Harte, at least the way I read this story, is a Christ symbol. Because that child produces in that camp a tremendous change. This is one of the ways that Harte puts it. And so the work of regeneration began in Roaring Camp. Almost imperceptibly, a change came over the settlement. The cabin assigned to Tommy Luck, or the Luck, as he was more frequently called, first showed signs of improvement. It was kept scrupulously clean and whitewashed. Then it was boarded, clothed, and papered. The rosewood cradle, packed 80 miles by mule, had, in Stumpy's way of putting it, sort of killed the rest of the furniture. So the rehabilitation of the cabin became a necessity. The men who were in the habit of lounging in at Stumpy's to see how the Luck got on seemed to appreciate the change, and in self-defense, the rival establishment of Tuttle's Grocery bestirred itself and imported carpet and mirrors. The reflections of the latter on the appearance of Roaring Camp tended to produce stricter habits of personal cleanliness. Again, Stumpy imposed a kind of quarantine upon those who aspired to the honor and privilege of holding the Luck. It was a cruel mortification to Kentuck, who in the carelessness of a large nature and the habits of frontier life had begun to regard all garments as a second cuticle, which, like a snake's, only sloughed off through decay. Wow. How would you like to run into that guy? To be debarred this privilege from certain prudential reasons, yet such was the subtle influence of innovation that he thereafter appeared regularly every afternoon in a clean shirt and a face still shining from his ablutions. So there, the transformation takes place. The temple of the luck is cleansed and becomes a holy place to the whole camp, and probably the dirtiest, grimiest person in the whole camp takes on a whole new appearance. I think I see resurrection happening there. And it's not only with personal hygiene and physical buildings. In the moment of resurrection, well, the whole world becomes new. It said, he writes, on long summer days, the luck was usually carried to the gulch from which the golden store of Roaring Camp was taken. There, on a blanket spread over pine boughs, he would lie while the men were working in the ditches below. Latterly, there was a rude attempt to decorate this bower with flowers and sweet-smelling shrubs. Can you see these miners putting flowers on a little baby's crib? I mean, this writing just wow. And generally, someone would bring him a cluster of wild honeysuckles, azaleas, or the painted blossoms of Las Mariosas. The men had suddenly awakened to the fact that there were great beauty and significance in these trifles, which they had so long trodden carelessly beneath their feet. Awakening. Christ awakens, and the whole world becomes new. That which once was mundane or tossed to the side, when Christ awakens in us, in that moment of resurrection, we can see inherent in it a great beauty. And what once was lost, all at the wonder of this world, becomes unleashed in our hearts and minds. One more time. I really do hope you get this message. The self or Christ is present in everybody a priori, but as a rule in an unconscious condition to begin with. But it is a definite experience of later life. When this fact becomes conscious, it is not really understood by teaching or suggestion. It is only real when it happens. And it can happen only when you withdraw your projections from an outward historical or metaphysical Christ and thus wake up Christ within. Every moment of every day we stand in the garden. We turn around. We see Christ every moment, every day. And when those twin stones of historical projection and metaphysical projection are spun away, the Christ who stands before you and before me calls the name, your real name, my real name. And resurrection happens. And the whole world becomes new.